And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome here to the Steve Deace Show, live and on demand here on BlazeTV, radio and podcast. I'm Steve Deace alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. We are brought to you by our friends over at Preborn. If you want to donate to a pro-life ministry that actually gets things done, that actually saves babies and their mamas, and understands that we are now dealing with soul-to-soul combat. They're literally out there on the streets with clinics around the country confronting women who are considering the murder of their children with the ultrasound that proves to them with that heartbeat that is not an unviable tissue mass, that's not a glob of tissue, that's a baby. And then when they're confronted with that truth and they choose life, they then offer them the grace of support, counseling, even up to 2 years after birth. Okay, so they do this all for free, folks, but it's not free to do it, which means they need tax-deductible donations from people like us. So make one today. Did you know it's just $28? Even with Bidenflation, it's just $28 for an ultrasound that has at least, on the conservative end, 50-50 odds of saving a life. Where would you better spend $28 today than to give it to Preborn at preborn.com/Steve. Again, that's preborn.com/Steve. All right, coming up on today's show, the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, will join us. We will begin playing buy, sell, or hold here at the bottom of the hour. But let us begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened? And my computer is picking the wonderful time to screw up. Here's what happened while we were away. What happened while we were away, brought to you by a new golden rule just dropped.
In Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and their personal choices that they make. Even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, there's a golden rule. Mind your own damn business.
Tim Walz, who locked his state down in draconian fashion and set up a snitch hotline so neighbors could tell on neighbors who weren't social distancing during COVID, was formally introduced as Kamala's running mate last night in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But who is Tim Walz really? Check out this report from Alpha News in Minnesota from 2022.
The public needs to know how pathetic his leadership was as a National Guardsman.
On a 150-year-old farm in Brewster, Tom Behrens hopes his tell-it-like-it-is style will finally get the attention he believes it deserves in Minnesota's race for governor. In a way, he's back again to wage a public war of words against Tim Walz.
He abandoned us, you know. I mean, what the hell kind of leader does that? I mean, he just, as soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit.
This all starts years earlier when Behrens says Walz's misleading statements about his military service first led him to come forward in the fall of 2018.
So you try to get this message out, but Minnesota's largest newspaper checks it out, says it's 100% true, but yet refuses to print.
When I hung the phone up, I said, what the hell is this, North Korea?
Back in 2005, a warning order went out to the 1st Battalion, 125th Field Artillery to mobilize for a mission to Iraq. At the time, Walz served as the unit's highest non-commissioned officer, but months later, Walz would retire from the Guard, avoid the deployment, and run for Congress. Tom Behrens was next in line for the position and was asked to take his place.
I was like, well, for Pete's sake, this guy quit. And if I say I'm not going to do it, I mean, what the hell kind of leadership is that?
Behrens would go on to serve in Iraq on a nearly 2-year deployment as a command sergeant major. All while Walz began using that title as a congressman. Behrens says he first contacted Walz with his concerns, sending these letters to Washington. They all went unanswered.
But then we fast forward to the election in 2018 in Minnesota, and you try at that time to get people's attention with this story and also with what seems to be a very misleading statement that he continued to make about his service.
It kind of just sat there, you know, when he was a congressman, he bragged that he was a command sergeant, retired command sergeant major. I'm the highest ranking person ever in the House, and, you know, all this lie that he was telling. The state of Minnesota came out after 2018, after this was exposed, and they said, well, he can say that he served as a command sergeant major, but he can't say he's a retired one because he's not.
And that's what he was saying.
And he was saying that, and it's stolen valor is really what it is. I don't know of anybody else that's done what he's done.
Gee, what a swell guy. J.D. Vance, former Marine, your thoughts?
What really bothers me about Tim Walz as a Marine who served his country in uniform, when the United States Marine Corps, when the United States of America asked me to go to Iraq to serve my country, I did it. I did what they asked me to do it, and I did it honorably, and I'm very proud of that service. When Tim Walz was asked by his country to go to Iraq, you know what he did? He dropped out of the Army and allowed his unit to go without him, a fact that he's been criticized for aggressively by a lot of the people that he served with. I think it's shameful to prepare your unit to go to Iraq, to make a promise that you're going to follow through, and then to drop out.
And now a few odds and ends. Another member of the squad has gone down. This time it's Congresswoman Cori Bush of Missouri, who lost her Democrat primary last night to another probable Marxist, Wesley Bell. A Pakistani national with purported ties to Iran was arrested last month on charges he plotted to assassinate former President Donald Trump and multiple other public officials, according to a criminal complaint unsealed Thursday in Brooklyn federal court. After spending time in Iran, a Asif merchant flew from Pakistan to the U.S. to recruit hitmen to carry out the alleged plot, according to detention memos. U.S. stocks have rebounded for a second day in a row as global panic, at least for now, appears to have eased a bit. And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at My Patriot Supply. They think they can violate your right to protect your own family. They think they can force your delusions onto your children. They think they can control the media and hide the truth that you just saw there in that story from Alpha News that Aaron highlighted. But you know what they can't take away entirely? Self-reliance and the peace of mind that comes with that. All right, so that's what My Patriot Supply wants to help you with. You can get their 3-month emergency food kit right now at preparewithdace.com. That's 2,000 calories per day, so all 3 meals. Also includes drinks and snacks. There's well over a dozen different variations to mix and match. Last for up to 25 years with unpierceable packaging. All right, and the meals are supposedly very good too, but here's the thing. You want to hopefully never have to find out. All right, but that's why you want the peace of mind, just in case. Well, that could never happen here. Happens here again. All right. Go to preparewithdace.com and you'll get that with free shipping and save $200 as well on your kit. Save $200 on your kit and get free shipping at preparewithdace.com. Again, preparewithdace.com. So I did a speaking engagement up in Minneapolis back in March. And we were talking a few days ago. Go back and tell yourself 5.5 months ago, so late February, right, that we were going to see a near assassination attempt. We were going to see an open coup, right? I mean, the calamity calendar or clock, whatever you want to call it, it does seem like its pace is accelerating around here, does it not?
Yeah.
Okay. And whether we're looking at something eschatological or just historically existential, a wise man once made analogies to birth pangs and contractions and how they seem to come quicker as the pace towards the culmination hastens, right? Mm-hmm. If you would have told me, and nothing against the group in Minneapolis, it was just, it was an awards banquet for conservative state legislators up there in Minnesota. And, I've done several of these. I do several of these events a year. I love doing them. But if you would have told me that, because it was only March, I had several more scheduled, that was going to be the speaking engagement that was going to be the most consequential for how I was going to view this election by the time it came to where we are right now. And where are we right now? Well, folks, we are 90 days until November 5th. As of today, 90 days until November 5th. North Carolina begins early voting in 30 days. Pennsylvania begins early voting in 40 days. Wisconsin begins early voting in 48 days. Arizona begins early voting in about 60 days. So it's game on, basically, right now. But I would never have guessed, of all the speaking engagements and appearances I was going to make this year, that this event, this banquet, an awards banquet for conservative state legislators in Minnesota would be the one that would end up being the most relevant to this election, because Tim Walz was on nobody's short list for anything at the time. But the thing that really struck me about being up there in Minneapolis around these conservative state legislators that evening. Morale was low. And if you're one of, after the 2022 midterms, there was a small base of people who, the McCain flake voter, remember, who didn't vote for Kari Lake because, well, she made some comments she should not have made, but also because she didn't fluff them enough. And you remember I said after that election, I said, hey, hope it's not your kid in the suburbs there that's the next to get his hands on some fentanyl, and you're the new family writing a tragic story in the obits because Kari Lake didn't touch your monkey enough, didn't rub your monkey enough, didn't shock your monkey enough, Peter Gabriel. I hope that's not you. Remember we made those kind of comments? Yes. Because that would be a tragedy if that were you. Well, I mean, she wasn't nice enough to Jeff Flake and John McCain, so I guess I'll just risk my kid ODing on fentanyl. Okay? Minnesota has been a hardcore Democratic state all of our lives. It's the state that the late Paul Wellstone came from, and for many years he was the most left-wing member of the U.S. Senate. Now he'd be mainstreamed in the Democratic Party, but 20 years ago he was the most left-wing member in the U.S. Senate. I mean, to the left of Ted Kennedy. Every now and then, Republicans could get elected there, but it would be like a Tim Pawlenty kind of Republican. Just essentially a technocrat. Nice guy. Got to know Tim Pawlenty when he ran for president. He was in our state a ton. Nice guy, no threat to anybody.
Or when they need a fix, they go to Jesse Ventura.
Or that, yeah, okay. But at least there was some kind of Republican presence still in a reliably Democratic state. How reliably Democratic? It's the only state in his historic 1984 romp, which I don't think we'll ever see anything like this in American history again, because of just how balkanized we are as a people. But it's the only actual one of the states that Ronald Reagan couldn't win in 1984. In fact, Ronald Reagan lost it twice. It's actually the only state Ronald Reagan lost twice. In 80 and 84 is Minnesota. Now here in Iowa, we know a lot about Minnesota because we're only a couple of hours from where we're broadcasting from the border of Minnesota right now. And it is closer for us here in Des Moines to the Minnesota border than it is to go to Northwest Iowa and Sioux City. When I used to work on the legendary Blowtorch 50,000 watt award-winning radio station WHO here in Des Moines, we got more calls from Clear Lake, Iowa, and right over the border, in Minnesota, okay, than we would get from Northwest Iowa, because the WHO signal, though one of the mightiest in the country, it is a vertical, not horizontal signal, okay? And so there's a lot of cross-pollination between these two states. There's a lot of people, Iowa's big football rival, other than their in-state rival, is Minnesota. One of the most popular football teams in our state in the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings, because of their proximity to the state. And even though there's a lot of cross-pollination between Iowa and Minnesota, folks, I have to tell you, these states right now have literally nothing in common. They have about the same demographics. There's a little bit more of a black population in Minnesota because of Minneapolis as a larger urban area than Des Moines. But that's about it. But from a worldview standpoint, Minnesota is a foreign country right now. And so is Iowa, the other way around to them. That's Iowa and Minnesota. And the amount of times I heard from those in attendance, these guys got one radical in. Used to be you at least had to pretend to be Minnesota nice, okay? Even if you were a left-winger, okay? They get one radical in, and in one session, they turned this into California overnight. I don't know that the state will ever recover from it. I mean, I heard this from people in elected office. I don't know that we will ever recover from it. We simply don't have the demographics here in the state There could be some kind of, reverb that maybe a Jesse Ventura figure gets elected or a Tim Pawlenty figure gets elected, but those aren't the kinds of people that are going to do what Kim Reynolds or Ron DeSantis has done. You see what I'm saying? Where you're going to pick up a state and literally against its own will take it way more to the right to undo the damage of what was previously done. Okay? And, I mean, I think Ron DeSantis said yesterday they have received more relocations from Minnesota than any other state. Down there in Florida. One. It took one loss to this kind of a swift boat communist, because this looks very similar to the swift boat story with John Kerry and stolen valor and what went on with them 20 years ago. Okay. It took one. Just one time. That's all it took was one. And it wasn't like Tim Walz was hiding who he was. It wasn't like he fooled some people and got in there. It took one. And these people are not like us. They don't go in there and say, well, okay, now that we're in office, we better moderate. We don't want the blowback. No, they just went right in there on mission, because to them it is a mission field. They went in there on mission one time and may have permanently damaged that state. A state that was, and this is a state that's used to being voting left. And they have really just the right in that state is I'm keynoting the banquet for the conservative awards for the conservative legislators. The people in this room are the heartbeat of resistance in the state of Minnesota, okay? This wasn't a Rotary Club. This wasn't a Lions Club. Not that there's anything wrong with those things. I've done those events too. But understand that this event, these are the people that are at that legislature every day starting in January. And the session is still going on, by the way, when I'm doing this banquet in early March. They're there every single day fighting the battle. Some of them have been there for decades. They've seen it all.
Tip of the spear.
Yes. So how bad does it have to get before they're like, I don't know that we'll ever recover from this. We might be done as a state. We might be done. What they have embedded here, done here. As of August 1st in Minnesota, you cannot put a 12-year-old in the front seat of a car, but you can give a 12-year-old gender reassignment surgery. And I'm not making that up. They California'd that state like a Thanos snap.
And they did it with a one-seat majority in the Senate for most of this time. Now it's a tie.
Correct. Reckless abandon. And even if Republicans do win because they push the state too far, the infrastructure there, they'll stop like most of the new bad stuff that Tim Walz people want to do. But the stuff they've already done is done. They don't have the infrastructure to undo what has been done to their state. They don't have that. And I bring this up because I continue to see people in my feed and in my emails somehow everyone else who sees what we're really up against here is a whore, a grifter, and a sellout. But if Ron DeSantis sees it, he's somehow exempt from your criticism. If Ron DeSantis jumps on the show, jumps on Sean Hannity, whose show for 10 years has been a Donald Trump super PAC. If he jumps on there to campaign for Trump, you all are totally fine with it. Anybody else mentions, we can't afford to lose this, we're all whores, grifters, and sellouts. Weird. Can you guys think of any other thing on the right that's existed recently where like the figurehead was exempted from any criticism and then when he did something counter to your narrative, it was reconciled, if not spun as, well, he's got to play the game. But if anybody else does it, okay, they've got to be held to a higher standard than the actual figurehead does. Is there anything else like that on the right at all that you guys can think of?
No.
I can't either. So let's just move on. Let's not. Why don't you take a visit to Minnesota? Why don't you go visit some of those state legislators that I was with that night, who had no idea that the governor that had just done this to them was about to be potentially a heartbeat away from the presidency? Why don't you ask them? No, this isn't losing to Bill Clinton. Why don't you ask them what happens when you're in a, at best, centrist state? I would say right now, not based on how they relate to one another. That's a cop-out. Because if we do it based on how they relate right to left to one another, we're still a right-of-center country, okay? But if we do it on the basis of our actual belief system, we're not a right-of-center country. At best, we're a centrist country. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm not going to go for the canard of comparing them to one another as the subjective plumb line. As in terms of the worldview that it will take to actually stop what these people want to do to our country, at best it's 50-50. Likely we're behind. It might still be right of center if your left is Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, but that's not like actual right of center. Okay, that's like Macron is right of center in France to, like, you know, Joseph Engels or Karl Marx. Fair? Mm-hmm. Okay. I want you to take a trip up to Minnesota. I want you to go to meet some of the conservative legislators that I was with. Most of them, by the way, no real fans of Donald Trump on a personal level. Many of them demoralized because DeSantis had dropped out about a month before I go up there to speak. They were pretty demoralized by that. But I want you to go up there. I want you to ask them what happens if you just decide it can't really be that bad. This is doom saying, doom prophesying. I want you to take a trip to a place called Minnesota. Not California, not New York, Minnesota, 2 hours from here. And if you spend any time knocking on doors in Iowa for Ron DeSantis, then you'll know. It's like Minnesota, a state that's a 2-hour drive from where I'm at right now. It is like Minnesota is is across the dimensional plane. They're just completely different. Largely white states, largely rural. But in terms of the culture there, Minnesota is California. And it's one state over here. I really believe this. We're being exposed and we are being tested. What you have with the Kamala Walz ticket is everything Barack Obama ever fantasized about and maybe wasn't willing to say himself. They're now saying it out loud, and they have like none of his charm or popularity while saying it. This will be, as I said yesterday, this will be the biggest worldview difference election I've ever voted in. The biggest one. And Ron DeSantis realizes that. That's why he's out there. I mean, man, during the campaign, I'm telling you guys, we had to beg Ron DeSantis to tweet. Literally, we had to beg. Can we get him to tweet? Can we get him to tweet? Get him to tweet. Tim Walz gets named VP. Dude tweeted 3 times in 10 minutes because he knows. You may not come back from that. If you're one of those people that thinks you're game theorying this out and if we lose another one, then people will finally turn to the true movement conservative, explain to me. People aren't as smart as you think they are, number one. To most Americans, Donald Trump is the furthest right person they've ever been asked to vote for. Now, those of us who are actually on the right know this is not true. But in terms of the way he's branded your normie neighbors, is that not what they think, guys?
Sure.
That is absolutely what they think. So your bright idea is we give the country over to Kamala and Tim Walz. And that means that the country's going to be like, yes, by all means, come back with an even more right-wing candidate than the one we just rejected. I don't have that kind of optimism, faith. I don't think any lessons will be learned except by us if we lose. I have a little birdie who's doing polling for the campaign in battleground states. I've mentioned him before. Chatted with him this morning. He says, first of all, a lot of the public polling you're seeing, basically psyop, sugar high, don't buy into it. But he says there is concern. Because the biggest weakness that Biden had is the center left of the party did not want to vote for him again. They all thought he was too old. They probably would have shown up on election day, but it would have been begrudgingly, and they were not going to be organized and energized until then. He said, those people, what I'm seeing in the battleground states, except for Arizona, he told me. And he's feeling very good about Arizona. He said, except for Arizona, what I'm seeing in the battleground states is those center-left voters they've all come home now. Now, she could go out in a debate next month and absolutely remind everybody why they hated her a month ago. Okay, that's very possible that could happen if there even is a debate. But that would not be an event that we can control, would it? We have no control. Mm-hmm. It's just as possible they'll game plan out the entire thing to be favorable to her, leak the questions to her in advance. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we have once they step on that stage, we don't have really any control of what happens at that point. None of us thought Joe Biden was going to blink out from the beginning of that debate. No one predicted that. We all thought that it was possible it may emerge at some point, but we didn't think it was going to happen right from the very jump of the debate. No one predicted that. That's an organic event you can't predict. So we're back to the same election we had before. We need maximum turnout of our side, and Trump's going to have to make himself more amenable to the 2 to 4 points of independence we lost in 2022. Now, I have no control over Trump making himself more amenable to independence, and I can't want him to win more than he wants to. You know, we all went to bat for that Italian boxer last week. She then turned around and apologized to her own oppressor. And I mean, you can't. Did you see that?
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course.
You can't fight for people harder than they're willing to fight for themselves. It just simply cannot happen. I mean, even God looked at the Israelites and said, hey, I've given you the land, but you're going to actually have to go now and do it. I mean, it's yours. If you do what I told you to do, I'll give it to you. But you have to then do it. Not like stand out here on the banks of the Jordan, but like cross over and start going to war. And I'll give you the victory, but you actually have to go. You have to do it, okay? I think you guys, particularly if you live in Florida, under protection of the Godfather, at least for another 2 years, I think you guys, if you don't live in a place like Minnesota, or you haven't talked to your neighbors in a place like Florida that moved from a place like Minnesota to come to where you live, I think you have no idea what's in store when these people take over. No idea. And if you don't, that's really on you, because they're telling you out loud what is. They're telling you out loud. They're not even hiding this. They're not even hiding this. And I fail to see the strategy of believing, well, if America will learn a lesson. Why don't you go ask those conservative legislators in Minnesota if some lessons have been learned? Because they think their state may be permanently ruined. Hope it's not your loved one that they want to put in prison for praying outside an abortion clinic. Hope it's not yours. Hope it's not your son or daughter they send off to die in a useless war. And you're there at the funeral. Hope it's not yours. Hope it's not yours. Hope it's not your loved one trapped over there in the Middle East because we're having all-out wars instead of Abrahamic Accords. Hope it's not yours. Hope it's not yours. I get it, man. I've been as disappointed as anybody of Donald Trump not fulfilling his talking points over the years. But I can't sit here and tell you how many of Donald Trump's talking points he's going to fulfill. But I can tell you this, based on what I've seen in Minnesota from the likes of Tim Walz with my own eyes. These people will fulfill every one of their talking points if we let them. Every single one of them. Even in a place like Minnesota. They will California that sucker in one session. And maybe irrevocably damage it. More in a moment. Hey, our friends over at Patriot Mobile have been on the cutting edge of developing the much-needed parallel economy in America. And when I have been telling you over the last few years that they take your profits and end up giving them back to causes and values that you believe in, I've seen it with my own eyes. I mean, I have not spoken at a conservative conference, and I don't get invited to a lot of those kinds of things. I'm not typically the conference speaker guy. I'm typically the guy you bring in by himself, okay? Because somewhere along the lines, you try to put a conference together. Well, has Deace offended that person or ticked them off? Okay, so that makes my case even stronger because it's a selective group of conferences on the right that ask me to speak at them, and I can't think of one I've been to in the last couple of years that Patriot Mobile was not one of the sponsors because they are Patriot Mobile. They're America's only mobile phone company that's American. So if you want to make the switch today, they have an outstanding customer service team, an outstanding product. I mean, we have no complaints whatsoever. They'll customize it for you as well. You can switch your number, keep it, upgrade your phone, keep that, whatever you want to do. If you're a veteran or first responder, let them know when you go to make the switch. They've got extra ways to say thank you for your service. For the rest of us, you can go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. And if you do, you'll get a free month of service at patriotmobile.com/Steve using the offer code Steve to get that free month of service at patriotmobile.com/Steve. All right, let's get to some buy, sell, or hold. Todd, you and I have yet to see what Aaron is about to unfold before us. These are submissions from you in the audience. No topic is off limits. Aaron will just decide what is actually on limit and what is not. Todd, you and I will then decide, are we going to buy that? Are we going to sell that? If at any point in time, however, should I do this? Yeah, it's theological. Let's do it. It's theological. Okay. All right. If at any point in time you decide to use a hold, all right, then because you have emasculated yourself in front of at least 12 or 15 people, here is your punishment. So I don't know, how much do you know about Jewish customs and weddings and those kinds of things? Okay, how much you get, because
I do not like where this is going.
Because you probably know where I'm going with this.
I do not like.
Okay, so
I've been to a Jewish wedding, and
I mean, like in Bible times. That's what I mean. In Bible times. How much of that, because a lot of that imagery is used throughout the scriptures, both in the Old and the New Testament. There are numerous references to the, to the wedding ceremony and marriage in and of itself as, ceremonial previews or foreshadowings of what the covenant life with Christ is. Okay, so one of the things that would happen, there could literally be family, but if not family, absolutely a rabbi would verify on the wedding night that the marriage has been consummated.
You don't have to do it.
You don't have to. Okay, there would have to be verification that this marriage has been consummated.
Yeah, but you don't have to do this.
Okay, and that indeed the wife's family honored the dowry.
Todd is about to start
and
a
honored the
lightsaber
covenant
collection if it means he can eject from this conversation.
And to make sure that not just that the marriage had been consummated, but that the bride was virginal as promised. Okay. If you use the hold, Rabbi Erzin, you are going to have to verify confirmation of the Tim Scott wedding. You're going to have to verify consummation for that. That consummation took place. You'll have to verify it.
There was a red light, alarm bells, 5 miles ago.
Remember during the break when I said that monologue last half hour was just yeoman's work and how proud I was of you?
I've undone all that, damn it. I've done all of that.
You've done a 180.
That the beard has been shaved and the marriage has been consummated as a good rabbi would, Todd.
There will be no holds.
Okay, let's go.
We will begin with this from Bipolar. The Steve Deace threesome is going to slobber all over Trump till November, and when the deep state has their man, they're all going to be pissed when they don't get a reach around. You got to buy that or hold it like Lindsey Graham gets held by the Don. Your Cheeto Jesus. I won't be listening, so I don't give a runny turd. You guys are so disappointing the way you're fawning all over Trump. There was a staged shooting, and you all lost your poop like little schoolgirls. He hasn't come clean on one issue that you all have hammered for 4 years.
Now, is this parody? Do you want me to respond to this?
This is not parody.
It's not. Okay,
I'm pretty sure this is not parody.
Okay, well, put it back up there. Okay. I have said on this show for the last 2 years, all of last year and all of this year, when we began the vetting process of the candidates, I said all along, have I not, that if Trump was the nominee, I was going to vote for him. So on your first note, your complaint is that I'm doing what I told you I would do all along if Trump was the selection. But apparently I'm doing it too aggressively for you. That's subjective. Because I got to tell you, I know you guys think you're the know-it-alls, okay? I've got just as much stuff in my feed that's like, you're not helping us, you're not America First, saying there's no excuses if we lose, okay? So, you're not like some exclusive group, right? You're actually, here's the thing I'm here to tell you. You're really not any different than the group you're criticizing. You have just different criticisms. You're not any different. You're really not any different. Not. You're just not. And I know Ron DeSantis, and you all don't. He'd be disgusted by this kind of stuff. Just not what he's about on any level at all. It's absolutely not. It's just not. Ron DeSantis isn't jumping on Hannity, the Trump super PAC show of the last 10 years, because he's playing the game. Because he thinks it would be great for his future fortunes if Trump lost. No, he's jumping on there because he's concerned about the damn country if somebody like Tim Walz and Kamala Harris win. That's why he's doing that. All right, put the other thing back up there. So your first complaint has no merit at all. I mean, you're just subjectively complaining about the tone I'm using to do everything I said I was going to do all along if Trump won. Are we okay on that front so far? Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the second one, because there does appear to be some specifics here. All right. Let's start with the staged shooting. So your position is that, first of all, I agree it was a staged shooting. Actually, let me start there. I agree. I think they absolutely tried to kill him. I think they staged the entire thing. I think the goal was to kill him. 100%. And that's why Secret Service can't explain how he got that vantage point. That's why no one's been punished. They came up with a quasi scapegoat in the Secret Service director, but that only came after her testimony. She was so bad at this, they had to get rid of her because she even lost Democratic support. But until then, she wasn't even being forced into resignation. So if you think it was staged the other way, then you're claiming first of all, I love the fact you're using Trump's own term of the deep state. You're claiming the deep state risked turning Trump into a martyr after he was already the nominee by putting somebody up there to shoot him and miss. And that's your smart take? You think that's intelligent? Because it's honestly one of the dumbest things I've heard in my entire career. And let me give you one that's even dumber than that. Even dumber than that is if you think Trump staged it. And so somehow the same guy who was so desperate to get the quote-unquote deep state to get off the Russian collusion hoax coup that he had to bring in a Bushy named Bill Barr as his attorney general to end the entire facade and the entire charade. That same guy who's also facing 94 felony indictments from that same deep state was able to convince them and work with him on staging his own near assassination. That's what you're saying. I think this merits saying this on the air. That is some of the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my entire career. It absolutely is. And you have let Donald Trump break your brain. You truly are bipolar. I live with a bipolar woman. She's a therapist who diagnoses bipolar. She would diagnose you the same. You're not mentally well if you're coming to these kinds of conclusions. It's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. And the Blaze can come at me for dropping that on the air, Aaron. Just send the emails my way. But sometimes words need to be used. Like sometimes retard needs to be said because the level of stupidity is just, dumb doesn't adequately describe what's actually being articulated here and what you've allowed to happen to yourself. That you have Trump-induced retardation. Now, on the other factors you mentioned, you're right. He has not repented of any of those issues. But I'm now kind of at the point that if he did, you guys would just then turn around and say, well, we don't believe it. He's just doing it to get elected. Like Todd says, you have mistaken narcissism for principle. You're bound and determined to view yourselves as the smart people in the room. You think you have you're the 2 or 3% that really believes that the country is going to look at open Marxism without any of the Obama style, select it, and say, you're right, we're going with that. And then they're going to learn some cosmic lesson that'll then make them come and select the guy who's even further to the right of the guy they rejected. What peyote are you smoking, man? Did you go to Egypt with Aaron Rodgers? Sweat lodge at all? Maybe a little. Why do you think Ron DeSantis is doing this? You think he's doing this for craven ambition to be seen as part of the team? Because if he is, I don't want any part of Ron DeSantis 28. I thought that's exactly why we wanted to support him. He wasn't like that, right? Mm-hmm. So now he's going to do things he doesn't believe for his own ambitions. I'm out. If that's who Ron DeSantis is, I'm out right now. Before I even decide whether or not I'm in, I'm out. I mean, I didn't risk relationships, advertisers, audience backing DeSantis in the primary because I thought he was a guy that was just going to say stuff he didn't really believe because it advanced his ambitions, but because I thought he was courageous and brave. So then is he not being courageous and brave now? By actually swallowing some pride and going out there for a guy who some of his supporters even questioned his wife's cancer. Why? Because Kamala and Walz are cultural cancer. That's why. And because he knows there's a reason why more people have moved to his state from Minnesota than any other state. He knows he gets it. He knows what's coming. See, you guys want this to be about Donald Trump. I want it to actually be about you. I don't care about the name on the back of the jersey, man. I care about the name on the front. You all care about the name on the back of the jersey, which makes you very similar to the Roger Stones and Laura Loomers that you guys complain about and criticize. You're actually pretty similar to them. You're actually not really any different, frankly. It's really all about the name on the back to you and not the name on the front. They would agree. Now, they may have a different application, but y'all are starting from the exact same premise. I don't care if the alternative to these people is Buster Hyman, to go back to the challenge, Todd, if you use the hold. Okay? I don't care if it's IP Freely. I don't care. What I care about is my country, my kids, my grandkid and future grandkids, and I care about yours. That's all I care about. I'm gaining nothing from this. I'm not getting any kind of MAGA cut. I don't have any MAGA friends that wrote me off during the primary that have suddenly begun reaching out to me again. I guess I'm doing Bannon's show on Friday, but that's because Bannon's in prison. Chip is doing the show and having me on. Okay? If Bannon wasn't in prison, think I'd be doing Bannon's show on Friday? Nope. I'm doing it because Chip's doing it. That's why I'm doing it. I'm not getting a cut of any of this action. None. I didn't get the Sound of Freedom screening at Mar-a-Lago for Nefarious. Didn't get that. I don't have a piece of any of these third-party entities that are doing the groundwork for the campaign where people are taking huge commissions out of that. I'm not getting anything out of any of this. I simply don't want Kamala Harris selecting the replacements for Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, because that's how you Minneapolis America. And we don't come back. There are things you don't come back from. You just don't. Maybe you don't see that now, living in a state where it's 80 plus degrees year round, And you have the freaking God, you're under the protection of the Godfather. So maybe you don't see that right now. But the rest of America is not blessed to have a governor like him, and to some degree Reynolds. Not blessed to have that. 2 hours north of here, man. It's the Gulag Archipelago. 2 hours north of here. Where 12-year-olds can't sit in the front seat of a car, but they can get gender reassignment surgery. All right? That's 2 hours north of here. You guys want it to be about Trump. I actually want it to be about you. And I am confident if Trump wins, there are going to be plenty of days we're going to come in here and do this show. We're going to be like, wouldn't do it that way. Don't get it. Don't understand that. What are we doing here? That doesn't make any sense. Don't cut that deal. All right? I am confident that will occur. I am also confident that we'll get things like Abrahamic Accords as opposed to full-scale war with Iran. I am also confident we'll get things like energy independence as opposed to 38% of energy inflation. My wife told me today to fill up her Jeep, it was $80 to fill it up today. It was on E. So you guys only want to focus on the bad stuff Trump did. I have no problem holding him accountable for that. We just had a primary where I did that, correct? Mm-hmm. But he did nothing good for 4 years. He gets no credit for that. Nothing. Again, you think you're that much different than the other people because you're just not as zany. But from a premise standpoint, that's the exact same premise they're starting from. You're just more polished. And someone needs to tell you that. So I've nominated myself for the job. Todd, your thoughts?
Yeah, if you're going to be this aggressively stupid, please have the courage to put your name on it.
Well, there's that.
I mean, I'll tell you what, I've got this a couple weeks ago. We've got reasons to be anonymous. Almost none of you do. You just are this stupid and you don't want to be accountable for anything. Put your name on this thing at the very least. Have some balls.
I promise you that take is not the only take out there that I have seen directed our way. And I'd just like to say, you are far more emotionally invested, I guarantee you, in our decision to vote or not vote for Donald Trump than any of us are.
Yes.
Well, there's that too. Correct. All right. I think we're off to a great start. I'm happy with where things are, right?
Prayed about it?
I did. In fact, I might do it more so during the break.
Except for the Tim Scott stuff, this was a perfect time.
More in a moment. All right, back here with hour number 2. He'll get this if I say this to him, if he's watching here now or at any time today, but just a little shout out to our CEO, Tyler. I don't do this a lot, all right? Doesn't mean I don't do it ever, but to get me to do this, you have to route me. You have to really convince me that I'm not even kind of right. Otherwise, I won't give up my point. Fair? You guys have seen me give up my point, but I mean, it's got to be a snuff film argument, okay? Like my argument is dead, okay? It can't be resurrected because I'll keep going until you prove that to me.
You're insufferable that way. Yes.
Yeah, I am. And you dig that, right?
Most days.
Right. So this may never ever happen again, Tyler. If you're watching or listening to this now or later. I yield. You were right. You were right. And he will understand what that means.
Without giving it away, can I add one more thing? Probably did not sway what we're talking about here, but the observation is true nonetheless.
Yes. All right, let's get to hour 2. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Steve at stevedeace.com is how you can email us. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok, although I think it's X officially now, and I keep forgetting to call it that, so forgive me. Old habits die hard. You can also, if you love the podcast version, please leave us a 5-star review if you love the podcast. And we thank all of you that have done that. And also want to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, hit subscribe, or if you're on iTunes, follow. And that'll make sure that every time we do a new episode, it'll be right there in your podcast feed every single time. And we appreciate all of you that have done those things for us as well. I am told these things help us. I don't understand why, because it's funny. When I look at the podcast ratings on YouTube, I'll look at a bunch of left-wing podcasts I've never heard of. Okay? Like I understand that Dan Bongino has a bigger audience than we do. I think markedly. We all understand that. I don't understand how George Conway does. Right? And so I'm like, there is another America out there. Like, remember when they did the Colin Kaepernick shoes? And you guys were like, those are never going to sell. And I said, I think my fear is they're going to sell a crap ton of them, because there's like a whole other different America out there that they don't even need to make money from us anymore. They can just monetize them. Remember you had those conversations? Mm-hmm. And sure enough, Nike printed money on those Colin Kaepernick shoes. Like, all the communists bought them, right? Okay. So I'm looking at the iTunes podcast ratings the other day, and I'm like, how is George Conway like 30 slots ahead of us? All right. Maybe it's another America out there. I go and look. We have 3 times more reviews than he does. He posts an episode once every 4 days, let alone daily. There's like no metric there that would indicate whatsoever that he should be 30 slots ahead of us on iTunes, other than he's just giving the algorithm the message that it wants. Is that fair, Aaron? Mm-hmm. So I have no idea how 5-starring and subscribing helps, when I can look at anecdotal examples like, how in the world does George Conway's podcast rated way ahead of ours, okay? When we have these other data points that says we have way more listeners than he does. But anyway, please do it anyway, okay? Because I do know the aforementioned Tyler and his compadre Gaston. I know they dig it. So it does something for them. I don't know what it does for us, but it does something for them. So please keep those coming. Also, if you are, man, I can't even imagine getting into the real estate market right now. We have a house for sale on our block, and it's been for sale for a month. Gorgeous home in a suburb that pre-COVID, if a house stayed on the market for a month, it had black mold. All right. It's a neighborhood. It's perfectly situated because it's not so expensive like the gated community golf course neighborhood just down the road. But you're close enough to it that it's a really nice neighborhood, so you can like afford to be adjacent, right? And so houses in our neighborhood just fly. If the economy is anything other than comatose, all right, houses in this neighborhood do not last long. And this house they've had that sign in the yard because we restarted 75 hard, so we're back to doing long walks at night again. We've walked past that for sale sign of that house many, many times in the last couple of months. So, man, if you are going into the real estate market, first of all, secondly, make sure you've got an agent that you can trust, and we'll get you one of those at realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, realestateagentsitrust.com is where you can go. And that's where you're going to find an agent who only gets into our database because we have fully vetted their track record of success. And a lot of times these agents are right here in the audience at the Blaze. All right. So you need to make sure, man. I mean, this isn't a real estate market. It's the river Styx. Okay. So you need to make sure you have a guide, all right, who's seen things, okay, and can get you to where you want to go, whether that's across town or across the country. Realestateagentsitrust.com is where you want to go. Again, realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, Aaron, let's continue. Buy, sell, or hold.
All right, we will continue on with Connor B., who says the DNC doesn't believe Kamala can win, so they've crafted the most radical ticket with Walz in hopes of moving the Overton window leftward to look moderate in 2028.
180 degrees wrong. Sell. They don't care about looking moderate. They'll probably never try to look moderate ever again. They don't think they have to. They think that Trump's personal negatives are high enough now. They have controlled the education structure and pop culture long enough now that as long as they can keep the racial identity coalition intact, and that's why I said right after the debate Biden would be gone, because he was risking that. Okay. As long as they can keep that coalition intact, they still have the ballot harvesting advantages. I'm not saying I agree with their analysis, but Connor, your submission is seeing things from their perspective. You're trying to analyze it from their perspective, right? Okay. So I'm doing the same. From their perspective, they have nothing to worry about. From their perspective, the guy missed his shot at Trump. They missed. But they completely co-opted all the energy out of that with the Biden coup. No one's even talking about it at all. And the Trump campaign spent more time arguing with the Heritage Foundation in the weeks after that event than they did actually promoting that inspirational moment. Okay, so the way they're thinking, you have to understand these people don't ever admit any weaknesses at all. None. Has to be taken from them. Doesn't mean they're undefeatable. I mean, the Hillary Clinton campaign thought all these exact same things too. Didn't have to even go to Wisconsin. Didn't have to even go. Okay, so they can be defeated, but you will not defeat them by analyzing them except how they actually are, not how you want them to be. They don't think they need to put up any moderate faces at all. They don't. It's not even, watch their media. It's not even a term they even use. It's just not even in their lexicon. And I've said this before. I spent 5 years as a contributor on MSN, or 4 years as a contributor on MSNBC. I did over 50 appearances on, what does Dave Rubin call it, the televised insane asylum? Okay. I did over 50 appearances on that network. Not once did we debate who is the more moderate Dem candidate in a primary that could win a general. Never came up. And that was a decade ago. Think it's coming up now? No, it's not even on their radar screen. They're not like us. They don't look at things the way we do. They don't think they have to abandon their platform to win. And even if they did, they wouldn't do it anyway. That's what we just talked about yesterday. They could have put the Jewish guy from the crucial battleground state on the ticket and taken Pennsylvania off the board, but they couldn't violate their own orthodoxies. They could have put the military guy who's maybe not a total open borders, crazy, which is how he probably got elected in Arizona. They could have put him on the ticket, but that would violate their orthodoxies. They had these options and chose neither.
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite of what you think. Opposite of what you think.
We taught them that lesson in 2022.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Now, 4 years ago, this analysis might have been correct with Joe Biden. They didn't want to Bernie Sanders like Soviet up there pounding the lectern for 4 months in the lead up to November. Then we taught them in 2022, after they governed as communist or communist light, that we don't care. And so now they think they can win, running as rabid, foaming at the mouth communists.
They didn't. Donald Trump is at best a New York / Hollywood centrist, but they tried to normalize it that he was conservative Hitler. Why did they do that? Because Donald Trump says the thing, and they realized that they had crafted politics where Republicans were deathly. You can't just say that. You just can't do that. That's not how the game is played. Donald Trump didn't care about the game. That's why he had to be taken out. And then with J.D. Vance, instantly, he's weird. Why did that go viral so quickly? It's because he's the exact opposite. He is a normal guy, loves country, can lift himself up from his bootstraps, served his country. That had to be destroyed. So now instantly we get Walz, and he's folksy.
Taking the call from Kamala wearing the camo hat out at the lodge. Yeah.
This all has to do with what Aaron and Steve has said. Walz is perfect. He will say he will normalize, and this is why we call him normies. It's psychological. This is a psyop. He will normalize saying the most demonic things possible while being the old ball coach and looking like your dad, which is already and guys, so you'll get all the permission you want to. This is my sports bro thing. All I want, can I just be left alone, just to do nothing and not have my wife nag me? And now the old ball coach is giving me permission? They're playing you like a fiddle, man. This is perfect. Shapiro is pretty aggressive in language too, and the Jew thing aside, which is absolutely why they didn't pick him, but he doesn't look like the old ball coach. Listen, this guy talks aggressively because it works. I'm absolutely certain it works, because on my side of the fence, it worked as long as they would let me get away with it in Carlisle. But I was one guy, and then they just start calling the cops. But there's no press to take my back. Here, the press is going to allow all of it. They're going, Hercules, look at what the old ball coach is saying. Do we not understand this yet?
No, we don't.
Being a male is not a leisure pursuit. And the old ball coach is going to say, just sit over there and listen to my talking points and vote for Kamala, and you'll get to watch all the games.
Now, some of you are going to say, well, Trump says the thing, but rarely does the thing. You're right. And that's one of the reasons he's not president right now. But saying the thing in and of itself is still a very dangerous thing, because once somebody with a great platform starts saying something, even if they don't follow up on the thing they're saying, someone does. For example, let's go back to what we just talked about last hour. And I said this during the primary too. Ron DeSantis is never governor of Florida without Donald Trump. Never happens. Ron DeSantis could not have won a statewide primary in the Florida GOP as it existed pre-Trump and without his endorsement. Because why? I don't know. Look at every other statewide Republican: Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Rick Scott. Should I continue? Charlie Crist. Remember when he was a Republican, okay? One of these things is not like the other. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Ron DeSantis was never beating those people. He was never going to be able, coming out of Congress as a right-wing ideologue, to beat the establishment machine in Florida, in arguably the most expensive state in the union to campaign in. Was never going to do it. Trump's endorsement is how he did it. So even though Ron DeSantis ended up doing more of the things that Donald Trump just talked about, he never gets that opportunity if Donald Trump doesn't break that fourth wall, doesn't break those seals. Again, let me do this. We need to make sure we're gospel-centered and not Gnostic-centered. What I am seeing is there is a group of believers, and I think your premise is actually sound, to question narratives and question the premise. We did an entire escapade of that during COVID, for example, okay? But being contrarian is not necessarily being 4D chess conspiratorial. God wants truth to be known. God wants to be known. God wants his word to be known. And he can't make it any plainer than writing a book and then giving it to us for free, and then putting himself in human form to live with us, to eat with us, to travel with us, to suffer with us. He can't make himself any plainer than here's a book of everything about me you need to know, and I give it to you for free, and then here I am, right here with you. This doesn't require a 9-dimensional math. We didn't break COVID with 9-dimensional math. We don't even know how to do that. We looked at the data that was actually available and shared it with you. That a lot of other people could have looked at and shared too, and for their own sinful reasons, cowardice, they were in on it, whatever, I don't know, I can't judge everybody. But for their own sinful reasons did not. But did I make any trips over to Denmark to go through their public health data, clandestine overnight? Did I break into the public health building of Denmark in order to get their data? Did I do that?
No, I looped you in on a call out of Stanford.
Correct.
Yes.
That happened one time. And I did that from my man cave in the house I still live in. Okay. No, Denmark just published their data. I went and got their data online and shared it with you. That's not a very complicated operation, is it?
No. It feels better to you're part of the Super Friends in your underwear, Steve.
No, there was no cloak and dagger here. I was neither Dabney Coleman nor the little kid in Cloak and Dagger. There wasn't any of that. I just went online, found it, and shared it with you.
You're Leonardo DiCaprio in that gift. Hey, over there, look.
Yeah. The Gnosticism or the occult says there's a mantra to unlock. There's a hidden phrase. There's a fourth turning here that'll just and I don't mean fourth turning as a historical vantage point. I mean like a fourth turning of a key in a lock or a code embedded into a system. And if you get it right on the fourth turn, it unlocks and unravels, and suddenly the secrets of the universe are known to you. No. God wants the truth to be plain. Here is the plain truth. The plain truth is Donald Trump is a systemically flawed man, which is not unique because we are all systemically flawed in our own ways. His are just more obvious, and we know way more about them because he's the most famous person in the world. He is running against people that think he is such a non-danger. They spent the past year trying to put him in prison. And at the very least, the nicest thing you can say is they just so happened to coincide with them putting the absolute most anemic security operation in American history around him so he could be nearly murdered. That's the nicest thing you could say. And that's after they conducted a 3-year coup against his administration on a complete and total lie, fallacy, charade, with no merit at all. The people doing this to him pass laws like 12-year-olds can't sit in the front seat of a car, but they can get gender reassignment surgery. Do things like lie about their military service and drop out so that they don't have to go overseas while the rest of their unit goes to Iraq so they don't have to. Do things like run for president on Medicare for all, no more health insurance. Do things like visit Planned Parenthood clinics. Walz and Harris did that yesterday. Visit Planned Parenthood clinics for campaign stops. There isn't. Stop being a Gnostic. Stop being Gnostic-centered. Start being gospel-centered. Here's the gospel. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whomsoever will believe in him will not perish but have eternal life. That's the entirety of the gospel right there in that one statement. That's it. Can't be any plainer. Can't be any simpler. Did I say it was easy? No. But it's pretty simple. Pretty simple. God makes truth plain. He wants truth to be known. And that's why right now, at this pivotal moment in the future direction of the most important country in the world, we have a very obvious choice. Some of you think the choice is, do I have to become a Trump simp or not? That is not the choice. And if we win this thing on November 5th, I'm throwing a party. And I'm going to enjoy it. Because I know once he takes office in January, it's going to drive me damn crazy many of those days. Fair?
Oh, you know what I think about that.
I'm going to enjoy November 5th until Inauguration Day as much as possible because I know...
Even then, it's a coin flip.
It's a coin flip once we get to January.
But right now, it's the Russian roulette table.
Correct.
Yes. With the red bandanas. And
correct.
The
and instead of one bullet in the entire chamber, only one chamber doesn't have a bullet. Okay? So we're from coin flips to gunpoint. That's the actual choice here, folks. Coin flip to gunpoint. That's the choice. Some of you are so fixated on Donald Trump, and then you turn around and accuse him of narcissism, and you seem to be nearly as obsessed with him as he is. Hell, how much time do we even spend talking about him individually? Even reacting to him on this show most days?
Not much, because this isn't really about him.
It's not even really about him. It's really not. My principle is I would like my kids and grandkids and yours to not be forcibly castrated or go to prison. That's my principle. Maybe that's not principle to you. Good luck to you, And if that's not principle to you, I hope it's not you and your kids that go to prison and are forcibly castrated. Before we move on with Buy, Sell, or Hold, our friends over at Hillsdale are still walking the narrow road when many of the rest of America's universities and colleges sadly are not, and instead have become hubs for the spirit of the age. And that's why, now that it's back to school month, I love the fact that they've kept this Thomas Jefferson portrayal going on their website. Because I know a lot of you homeschoolers, we always started early. We would have started about this time of year, So this is a great homeschool add-on. If you want to help prep your kid for going into the den of iniquity of the government school system, this is a great addendum to get them prepped, because they're probably going to hear more actual American history in this video than they're going to get the entire school year at their government school, if that's where they're going. So go watch this inspiring portrayal of Thomas Jefferson as he reflects on the meaning of the Declaration of Independence in a letter that he wrote later in his life. And they'll also give you a free commemorative copy of the Declaration too when you go to daceforhillsdale.com. FOR, daceforhillsdale.com is where you can go. Again, that's daceforhillsdale.com.
Next, we go to Hank Hill. For true Christian conservatives, responsibility is freedom. Almost all normies want is freedom from responsibility.
Exactly.
Now here's somebody who gets it right there. I can't say it any better myself. I won't even try to add to it. It's brilliant, pithy, bye. Yep. That's the worldview clash right there. When I say this is the biggest worldview difference election I've ever voted in, some of you are going to meet, because again, you've allowed Trump to break your banks. Well, he's this, he's that.
Yeah.
Put that back up there, Aaron, one more time. This right here. And then read it out loud.
Hank Hill. True Christian conservatives, responsibility is freedom. Almost all normies want is freedom from responsibility. And I would add the addendum, they want that freedom from responsibility subsidized by government.
Correct. And that's what you were addressing, Todd. The spirit of the age knows this, and they're trying to concoct some external packaging that makes those normies say, I'm okay then. Yeah. Yes. I'll be over here. I'll be over here scrolling for my fantasy team while Coach Walz is over here talking about cutting my kids' balls off.
Yeah,
exactly.
And you know what we believe about revival or bust? It can't. And this, Steve mentioned this when an old senior statesman preacher mentioned. Do you understand what that means? That you cannot be as comfortable as you now and genuinely expect revival. It's impossible. It's absolutely, certifiably, physically, scientifically impossible.
Changing gears a little bit, Michael James says RFK Jr. will hide another bear cub in Central Park before Kristi Noem kills another puppy.
I'll sell, because I don't know the details of this thing with the bear cub and RFK. I'm loosely aware of it, but I don't know the details, so I can't. You know, actually, I like it's a snotty analogy, so I'll buy, even if I don't know if it's true. On the second thought, I'll buy because it's snotty.
I'm selling. I mean, Kristi Noem, I think there's more puppies in the closet already. So, yeah, she seems like she's got an appetite for it.
Next, Espresso Nationalism has this. Twisters is the best movie of the year so far, and it also has the best single of the year currently, Ain't No Love in Oklahoma by Luke Combs.
I don't think it's the best movie of the year, but it's a really good movie. It's really fun. It's completely unwoke. I loved it, So I think you're going too far, but, because I love they're making more movies like this again, I'll buy.
Well, and here, I will buy this because this is the kind of thing, and I said this about, what movie was that, with the stuntmen, based on
Fall Guy.
Fall Guy.
Yeah.
Like, these are why movies used to be made. Fun, but we don't craft religions around them and our lives around them.
Yep.
And then while doing that, miss the entire point of them and sit and do nothing.
Correct.
Uncontexted Dace 2 Electric Boogaloo is due to Sean Astin participating in the White Dudes for Kamala Zoom call like a little girly man. Steve can no longer watch Lord of the Rings, Rudy, or The Goonies.
I will quote from Man of Steel.
You were going to do this.
I will quote from Man of Steel. When Russell Crowe's Jor-El looks at Michael Shannon's Zod and says, I will honor the man you once were, Zod, by refusing to participate in this madness. So that's what I will do. I will sell.
Todd?
I will buy going forward. The stuff that's in the past, classics, but you have got to be wise as serpents in terms of the content being made going forward.
Agree with that.
And the fact, what's the point of all this? Why are we going to watch this stuff? Even if they make another great Marvel movie and it is the message for our times, and then we go back and bait, guys, then no.
Next, we go to Casey Deshak, who says, all DeSantis supporters, of which I was one and look forward to the future, understand whomever gets the nod in 2028 will require some level of support from Donald J. Trump or Donald J. Trump Jr.
I'm selling.
We have no idea if they lose. Here's what I know. I'm very confident this is true if Trump wins. If Trump wins, I'm very confident we will know what the political environment on the right is going to be. If Trump does not win, I have no idea what the political environment is going to be. I couldn't even make educated guesses. I don't think we understand how sectarian this is going to be. Okay. I know a lot of people think Trump is a divisive force. The reality is he's the only force that has kept this right coalition together the last few years, because we have dramatic disagreements. That when I was on with Megyn Kelly last week, our colleague Delano Squires had one of the smartest political observations I've ever heard. He said in the Democratic Party, you have a bunch of people who look different, but they all say and believe the same things. And in the Republican Party, you have a lot of people that look the same, but they all say and believe different things. Okay, and when the cornerstone of if Trump were to lose, if that cornerstone is removed, I have no idea what will happen next. It could be better, it's possible, but I don't know, and I wouldn't even begin to venture guesses about that. So I will sell. God love you, nothing personal, but every 2028 take is way too comfortable. What are you doing? Have you learned nothing from just the last month, the last 2 months? But can we try to win this day? Can we get the ball rolling a little bit? Because any one of you thinking about 2028 is not thinking about the fact that Kamala Walz can actually win this thing. Jesse Kelly just made, if we can't beat them, we've said it versions, if we can't win this, whatever we is, just looking at evil in the face and saying, no, not today. What the hell does 2028 matter?
Next, we go to Live Free. God repeatedly reveals himself, his authority through nature and natural events, like the rainbow, burning bush, flood, parting the Red Sea. Do we call the burning bush a natural event? I don't think so.
I'd call it a supernatural
event.
But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. At its core, the climate, trademark movement, is an effort to limit, control, and explain away God revealing himself via nature and the environment.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I don't think it sufficiently explains it. Basically, it's a bastardization of the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. The heavens declare the glory of God.
Oh, yes.
You're kind of touching on that, so I'll buy.
I'll buy. You are absolutely. I mean, there's a fantastic scene in the William Wilberforce movie Amazing Grace when he's contemplating. I mentioned this not too long ago. I don't know, but a spider web, and it just like he has kind of like a eureka, like that. Yes, nature, God's creation is a poem, a sonnet. I mean, yes. So to the extent that that's what you're talking about, of course they have to hijack it. It's the same thing with the White Witch shaving off Aslan's mane and then wearing it herself. The exact same thing.
I will come back. We'll finish up buy, sell, or hold in the overtime later today for subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. When we come back, we'll be joined by the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, next. So if you are looking for some encouragement, particularly after you listen to us. Oh, that's not in the script, is it? Is this on? I'm sorry. Can we start over? If you are looking for some encouragement as you're trying to live according to a biblical worldview, as a husband, as a wife, as a father, as a mother, with your children, get that encouragement from Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. Everyday issues they tackle, and they use God's word for guidance for more on that and even more complex matters as well. Focus on the Family is there to support your family every step of the way. Sound, biblically based advice on marriage and parenting that's relatable, practical, and genuinely interesting. If you want to subscribe, just go to Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. D-A-L-Y is how it is spelled. D-A-L-Y. Focus on the Family with JimDaly.com is where you can go. That's Focus on the Family with JimDaly.com. All right, with that, speaking of encouragement, let's bring in the prophet of woe and lamentation himself, Daniel Horowitz. Good to see you, my friend. How you be?
You know, you could also go to logcabin.org. They'll give you some good family advice. I was just Googling it, actually.
So it's going to be one of those weeks, huh? It's going to be one of those weeks?
Screen share here.
I don't even know where to go after that. I know where some people want us to go after that. Let's open-ended question. Democrats have ticket version 2.0. Your thoughts and analysis?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out the log cabin website. I mean, because they have a bunch of states, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. But look, Steve, it's a matter of if we don't get our blank together, Minneapolis and San Francisco is going to be America. It's that simple. I mean, it's not a matter of we're on a different plane than Minneapolis and San Francisco. It's that we are inexorably headed in that direction. If we don't affirmatively take action and change course and do different things, societally and economically, the bombs that the left has already placed will turn all 50 states like that. And by the way, you're already getting a sense of that with these initiative petitions, right? Where you're seeing with abortion, but other issues as well, that they're winning in red states. So this is just the warning. Look, there's a bunch of thoughts. Number one, the thought that only I could have that no one else has, but I think it's just as salient as horse race politics between Trump and Harris, is that where are our 20 to 22 Tim Walzes? Okay? In other words, how come there was a 2023 legislative session in Florida that mirrored the 2023 legislative session in Minnesota that Walz had, where he had every demonic construct under the sun implemented on fiscal policy, banning cars, tampons in male bathrooms, defining pedophilia as a gender identity. Where are these other states? Because I think this is very important, just because your audience probably hasn't heard this. Democrats didn't have spectacular sessions in like California, Massachusetts, because they already did this. They do what they can do at the first possible opportunity. They get power to actually use it. So it's the places where they didn't have the full power and they obtain it, like Michigan and Minnesota. So in Minnesota, Republicans have long held the state Senate, just because of the GOP dominance outside of the Twin Cities. So there's just often more Senate districts that are red. And because Republicans had an amazing 2022 midterm election, so for the first time, they lost the Senate. Now, they lost the Senate by one vote, by the way. And now technically it's tied because there was a corrupt Dem that had to resign. So temporarily, until the next session, it's actually tied. But with a 1-seat majority, I have a column coming out at the Blaze, top 10 radical things that Walz did in his state, and I had a list of 50, so I had to kind of combine them and just to get the number 10. And this was in one session. This was with a 1-seat majority. You hear a lot about a narrow majority. We've heard a lot about that the last year in Congress. Yet and it's very fleeting, right?
Like on our side, 59 Republicans out of 100 in the Senate would be a narrow majority. It's not filibuster proof, can't get anything done. We only have a 59-41 advantage. That would be a narrow majority on our side. On their side, narrow majority means something entirely different on their side. Yes.
Yeah, so they had a 34-33 majority in the Senate, and they did what they wanted all in 1 year. They left nothing on the table. And that's a very tenuous majority, right? Because, you push too far, there is a chance you'll lose. Meaning, even if Republicans can't win statewide there anymore, which I don't think they can, but you have to worry about losing the Senate. But they don't care. They don't care. They do. Meaning, they have an agenda. They do it. They worry about the politics later. They accommodate their agenda with their electoral viability and try to backfill it. They don't try to twist themselves up into a pretzel about electoral viability and then get neither. That's what they did. Now you fast forward, we have, let's just call it conservatively, 20 states where Republicans now, because of the polarization, have a permanent, so you don't have to worry about losing it, permanent super majority trifecta. Okay, I'm talking about 3-1, 4-1, 2-1. Everywhere. Why don't we see that? Why don't we see that in any of these other states? So that's the observation I would like for our colleagues to make, and that is within their own domain and sphere of influence to to change tomorrow, regardless of what happens with the federal election. Now, as far as the presidential election, look, Steve, it's real simple. The plumb line is this is a ticket where you are allowed to burn down businesses, but you can't build businesses. At literally the same time, May 2020, that Tim Walz was letting these guys out of jail or not arresting them for burning down police stations and businesses, he put business owners in solitary confinement because he said that, there was COVID quarantine. So that was an excuse. They put them in solitary confinement because I had to find a lawyer for one of them at the time. This is what we're up against. We're up against inflation, invasion, indoctrination, and you have two candidates now that champion every element of those policies, every element of anarcho-tyranny, of how, we're going to regulate kids being in the front seat, but we're going to have kids vote. They have pre-registration at 16 years old, and of course getting sex change castrations against parental consent. That is what you have there. If Republicans cannot win this election, the party needs to fold. If MAGA can't win the election, the movement needs to fold.
Let's talk about the stakes here. Because I mentioned it at the top of the show before you came on. I keynoted an awards banquet for conservative legislators in Minnesota. All right. There's a statewide activist group gets together every year, and they have honors for the best conservative state legislators in Minnesota. And so I was in a room with what we would call the resistance for an entire evening. And I have to tell you and hadn't thought about this event since March. In our line of work, we do several of these kinds of things. And now this is all kind of coming back to me with Tim Walz on the ticket. The amount of demoralization in that room. The session was still going on. There's a lot of people that have been doing battle at the State House for many years. This was already a Democrat-leaning state. Republicans, Ronald Reagan couldn't win this state. Okay, and either 1980 or 84, it's the only state he lost twice. So my point is these are battle tested. It's not like they're from Alabama and like Democrats suddenly took control. What's going on here? They're used to eating crap sandwiches. They're used to Tim Pawlenty's the best kind of Republican we can get here. You know what I mean? They're if anything, they're more cynical and calloused because they've been a minority party in the state for a long time. Which I think actually it makes it more impactful what I'm going to say next, brother. And it's despite that, the level of demoralization, we've never seen anything like this. These people California'd our state in one session with a 1-seat majority in the Senate. This governor is unreal. I heard we may never recover from this multiple times. Because even if there is some kind of a reverb and a Tim Pawlenty, because it's Minnesota, probably a Tim Pawlenty Republican's the only kind that could get elected there statewide right now. That guy may not agree to more new of the same bad stuff, but the idea that they're going to undo all the bad stuff that was already done, that stuff's permanent. That came up from the bowels of hell and it's written in concrete. I mean, it takes a jackhammer like a DeSantis to drill that stuff out of there. Okay. And I have thought a lot about what I saw and experienced with these folks and their wives at that banquet that night since he was put on the ticket. Because I think people don't realize, I mean, I have no idea most days what Trump is going to do if he wins. I don't know how anybody could, I don't. I know what these people are going to do every single day. I live 2 hours from Minnesota, Daniel. We are twin neighboring states. Minnesota is on a different interdimensional plane after the last few years. We have a lot of white people. There is Iowa and Minnesota have zilch, zero, nada else in common. They turned that place into California in one session. And I think it's important for people to realize what these people will do if given the power to do so. It's not theoretical. It's not a talking point. It's not an angle. It's not, well, they think they're going to lose anyway, so let's just get rid of the radicals now so we can be more moderate in 28. I mean, dude, that is a better wet dream than I had as a teenage boy. It's not any of those things. It's not any of that. That's fantasy land. What these people want to do is very real. And I saw it's right up north of me. And I saw what it does to our own people, how it demoralizes them when I keynoted that banquet that night.
And Steve, what's the first thing you do when there's a flood, a complete deluge of one area? Well, you erect sandbags in the immediate area around that. I mean, Iowa's right near there. And all the more of a sense of urgency why states like Iowa need to take it to the next level, that you need to erect sandbags so this can happen. Again, they're doing this with initiative petitions. They're trying to do ranked choice voting, and they do it, frankly, through Republicans. I mean, just last night, south of you talk about north of you, south of you, you had Missouri. This is not, okay, the leftover rhinos from 12 years ago. We elected in the primary, a new Republican. Mike Keogh got money from the son of Bill Gates, and would be another Mike DeWine Republican, that his biggest priority will be to bring in electric, vehicle jobs and, windmills and solar into the state. I mean, this is the thing. And to your point about that you never recover from this, I think an important thing people need to remember Obamacare. Republicans won the best elections ever over Obamacare.
Over 1,000 Democrats lost their offices nationwide, state, local, and federal, after Obamacare's enactment in 2009. Over 1,000 Democrats. When Donald Trump took over, there were the fewest Democrats in elected office than since before the Great Depression, and that's primarily because of Obamacare. And yet what you're going to say is, what did we do to roll any of Obamacare back despite that political carnage?
They got in there, and
Nothing.
It was very clear they had no intention of doing it. So here, what was the big legislative item of the Biden ticket? Okay, the Biden term, the Green New Deal. They call it the Inflation Reduction Act. Go to Bloomberg and you'll see an article there on almost every Republican in good standing, Brian Kemp, Henry McMaster, all these guys, Buddy Carter, Chuck Fleischer, these congressmen, that they are going to work to protect the job creation of the electric battery plants. They are already telling you they would not repeal that. You'll never get greater tailwinds with inflation the way it is. And they're like, Democrats could erect a concentration camp in red states and they'll be like, yeah, we need the jobs. We need the jobs. I mean, this is what we have. And that's what I'm telling you. It's going to happen unless we do something different. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I certainly don't want Hamas to win in November. But I think at the same time, if you're in a Missouri, if you're in an Iowa, we need to erect those sandbags. We need to build a red state insurance policy, regardless of what's going to happen, of what are you going to do to ensure that what happened in Minneapolis doesn't happen there? Because, again, if they get in through a ballot initiative, through a bad Republican, or through a Democrat, we know they don't build towards it. They don't build consensus. They do it, and once it's done, there is never the ability within the Republican Party to or desire to repeal it.
Great stuff, brother. Thank you.
Take care.
You bet. And have fun with the log cabins. Here, Daniel, brought to you by our friends at Lassie Health. Yes, Americans are hurting. Healthcare costs are out of control. We know government is not the answer. So what is? Well, Lassie Health is here to help shake things up. That's Lassie, L-A-A-S-Y. Lassie Health isn't health insurance. It's access to health care that you want without all the red tape, restrictions, and inflated costs. Coverage starts at just $30 a month, and you get transparent pricing, comprehensive coverage, tailored to your needs, and access to healthcare services without breaking the bank. There's no annual or lifetime caps on services, and you can start a plan at any time. For only $30 a month, this is their entry-level plan. You get over 400 prescription medications for free unlimited virtual mental health counseling, free 24/7 virtual urgent care, lab test up to 60% off, imaging test up to 75% off, and more. As you can see, Lassie Health is a game changer. So check out affordable plans that put you in control of your health at healthylink.com/Steve. For a limited time, get your first month free. That's up to $100 off eligible plans. So get healthy, be healthy, and stay healthy without breaking the bank at healthylink.com/Steve. Again, head over to healthylink.com/Steve. All right, gentlemen, final moments, thoughts on the conversation we had with Daniel?
Forget about Trump for a second and just remember your Aragorn. Offer them no mercy, for none will be offered to you. the pain that they are promising to bring your way. Just look it in the eye and at least admit it, and stop talking about 2028. I mean, we just believe foolish things.
Aaron?
You know whose rationale that was for launching his candidacy? That was Ron DeSantis' rationale.
Yeah.
He came to the same conclusion, that we're not getting a mulligan on this election, and that's why he ran.
That's why he's doing what he's doing right now.
Exactly.
So, again, it's difficult to do, and I struggle with it most days as well. And I'm not going to put a trap on people's consciences, but I would just encourage people to do your best to look at things as rationally as possible. As rationally as possible. It may end up that our goose was cooked long ago,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
but we need to find the answer to that question without having the additional barrier of emotional damage from the past.
Correct. Again, if because of his mistakes, you don't want to vote for him again, I am not going to argue with you. But if you are making these assumptions that we're going to learn some grand lesson or some other strategy is going to happen here,
it's Helm's Deep, brother.
No, that's not true. Romans 8:28.